You can see it. The next version of the business. Bigger team, stronger revenue, more market share, more leverage, more freedom. You are not thinking small, my friend. You are thinking, we are ready for the next stage. So the conversations start. How do we get more sales? We need to hire more people. We need better systems. We need to be moving faster. Where's that sense of urgency? We need to bring in technology. We have big plans to scale. And on paper, it all makes sense. The business is growing, the ambition is there, the opportunity is real. But then you stop and take a look underneath it. Every important decision still needs the same 2 or 3 people. Meetings create visibility, but not necessarily movement. The senior team can explain the delay, but they can't remove it. Managers are busy, but they're not always leading. And good people are carrying weak systems. The same problems keep coming back, just with slightly better language around them. That's the warning sign, because the most dangerous lie in a growing business is that revenue means the operating model is working. It does not. Sometimes revenue just gives dysfunction more room to hide. I'm Corinne Glass, founder of Glass Partners, and this is The Glass Signal, a podcast for people with talent and the courage to use it. This is where we talk about business, leadership, growth, and performance. It is for founders, business owners, senior leaders, people managers, high performers, and ambitious professionals who do not want to just sound sharp, they want to become sharper. We look at why businesses grow, why they stall, what leadership actually requires, and how performance is created through the systems, standards, and decisions most people avoid. So let's get into it. This episode is about why great businesses break before they scale. Not because they lack ambition, not because they lack opportunity, but because the business grows faster than the leadership, accountability, and operating rhythm underneath it. In this episode, I'm going to show you the warning signals that your business may be growing but not actually scaling. You'll learn the 5 fractures that quietly cap performance and a practical execution reset to strengthen the system before growth becomes expensive. Because the goal is not just to grow. Plenty of businesses grow. The goal is to build a business strong enough that can carry the growth. So here's the question that I want sitting in the back of your mind. If your business doubled in the next 12 months, what would break first? I'm sorry, I know that that's not the exciting question. It's not what would be exciting about it. It's what would break. Would decisions slow down? Would standards drift? Would your managers be exposed? Would your senior leaders or you become the bottleneck? Would your best people carry even more of the load? Would your meetings multiply without execution improving? The answer tells you where the real work starts. Growth does not create the weakness, it exposes it. And it's not just a founder problem. This happens in founder-led businesses, executive-led, family, privately owned, PE-backed, and companies with full senior leadership teams. I've been there, I've seen it. The pattern is often the same. The business reaches a level of complexity that the leadership system was never really designed to carry. At first, the informal system works. When the team is smaller, people rely on that proximity. The standards live in people's heads and the priorities are obvious because everyone's so close to the action. Decisions move quickly because the same few people have the context, the authority, and the judgment. And that it can work for a while. In fact, in the early stages, it can be the advantage. But then as the business grows, you've got more people, more clients, more handoffs and layers, more meetings, more interpretation, or perhaps misinterpretation. And then there's more room for that quality to drop, for the ownership to blur, and for decisions to stall. And suddenly the thing that once made that business fast starts making it fragile because the business was not scaling. It was simply relying on a few strong people, relying on memory, on urgency, relying on personal standards, relying on senior people stepping in, and relying on good people absorbing weak systems. That's not scale, that's dependency. And dependency always has a ceiling. This matters now more than ever because businesses are running leaner. They're moving faster and expecting more from fewer people. Most leadership teams are looking for leverage, AI, automation, new platforms, better dashboards, and reporting more efficient workflows. And those things can help, but they won't fix weak leadership. They won't fix vague standards, unclear ownership. They will not fix poor accountability. In fact, they often expose those things faster because if your operating rhythm is weak, technology just makes the mess move faster. If your leadership layer is underdeveloped, AI will not make people more accountable, clearer, or inspired or inspiring. If your standards are not clearly articulated and understood, automation will simply help you scale that inconsistency. That is why leadership, accountability, and standards are not soft issues. They are commercial levers, and I want to make that plain. When people hear me say the phrase organizational health, they can switch off. I see the eyes glaze over. It's almost like it sounds like consulting language, foo-foo fluff, and it's not what I mean. A healthy organization is not a workplace where everyone says, we're like a family and pretends that they're thriving with the words plastered on their wall. A healthy organization is a business where people know where they're going, leaders make and take decisions, standards are clear, ownership is understood, teams coordinate, no silos, and the business can adapt without everything being dragged through by the same few people. That's the point. Health is not vibes. Health is whether the operating system works. I read a report, I believe, by McKinsey, where they described organizational health as how well organizations align around a common vision, execute their strategy, and renew themselves over time. It also reports that organizations in the top quartile for health deliver on average 3 times the shareholder returns than the bottom quartile. And last fun fact, did you know that research found that managers account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores across a business? Translation, the way people are led, the standards they work to, the clarity they operate with, and the rhythm they execute inside do not sit outside of performance. They are performance. Let me tell you a story. I'm going to give you an example of Starbucks, and it's not because Starbucks is perfect. It's because it shows what happens when growth starts watering down the thing that made the business valuable in the first place. By the mid-2000s, Starbucks had expanded aggressively. I'm talking more stores, speed, more efficiency, more consistency, more throughput. And on paper, that made a lot of sense. And that's the seductive part about scale. Most scale problems do not begin with obviously stupid decisions. They begin with reasonable decisions that just simply compound badly. A faster machine, more efficient layout, more repeatable processes, sharper growth target, more aggressive rollouts. Individually, each decision makes sense. Collectively, they can start to strip away everything that made the business valuable. So back to my story. In 2007, Howard Schultz warned that measures taken to fuel Starbucks' rapid expansion had led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience. It was reported that he pointed to the automatic espresso machines, bag coffee, and store designs that became cookie cutter as examples of the brand becoming commoditized. And that phrase matters, watering down, because that is what happens in a growing business when standards are not actively protected. The business does not collapse overnight. The hiring standard shifts a little. The quality standard softens. The client communication becomes a little less sharp. Leadership expectations become a little more optional. The meeting rhythm becomes a little more performative, and accountability becomes a little less real. No single decision looks catastrophic, but the compound effect is bloody expensive. Eventually, the business is bigger, but it's not better. So, what did they do about it? In 2008, Starbucks shut 7,000 company-owned stores for a nationwide barista training session focused on coffee quality and transforming the customer experience. And that's a part leaders need to pay attention to. They stop the machine to reset the standard. Most businesses say standards matters. Very few are willing to interrupt revenue, convenience, speed, or ego to protect them. And that is the difference between having standards and having slogans. When the standard costs nothing, everyone supports it. When the standard costs time, margin, speed, comfort, or perhaps a difficult conversation, you really find out whether it's real. So let's make this a little more practical. There are 5 fractures I look for when a business is growing, but performance is inconsistent and too much still depends on a small group of people. Each one tells you where the people system is starting to crack under the weight of growth. So fracture 1 is leadership drift. This is what happens when leaders stop setting, modeling, and protecting the standard. It doesn't usually happen in one big dramatic moment. It happens slowly. One leader holds the line and another avoids the conversation. One manager addresses poor performance, another explains it away. One team protects the client experience, another cuts corners because, hey, no one's watching. One person treats candidates with care, another treats them like admin. And over time, the business starts rewarding and tolerating behavior it never meant to allow. That is leadership drift. Not because standards drift by themselves, leaders allow them to drift. The senior team might still be saying all the right things. We care about quality, we have high standards, we value accountability, we put people first. But the real standard is not what leaders say. The real standard is what leaders tolerate, what they walk past, what they excuse, what they delay, what they keep having conversations about but never actually correct. And this is where leaders usually make one of 2 mistakes. Some will avoid the conversation. They soften the standard. They explain away poor behavior and they convince themselves that they're being reasonable when really they're just avoiding the discomfort of leadership and an honest conversation. Others go the other way. They think leadership means being the firm voice, the scary presence, the person everybody fears. That is not leadership either. That is ego dressed up as standards. A strong leader does not need people to fear them. They need people to trust that the standard is real. Fear makes people hide problems. Standards make people lift. Fear makes people manage the leader. Standards make people manage the work. Fear creates silence. Standards create clarity. So when I talk about leadership setting standard, I do not mean aggression. I mean clarity, consistency, courage, and consequence. The ability to say, this is what good looks like. This is what we are no longer accepting. And I'm prepared to hold that line. That is leadership. And this is where growing businesses get in trouble. When the business is smaller, standards often live in the heads of the founder, CEO, senior operator, or the original leadership team. People absorb the standards through proximity. They see how things are done. They hear the conversations. They understand what good looks like because they're so close to the people who actually carry that standard. But that does not work at scale. At scale, standards need to be visible. Your people need to be able to answer without hesitation. What does good look like? What is no longer acceptable? What must never be compromised? What does client ready mean? What does candidate ready mean? What does leadership ready mean? What does done mean? And here's the real test. What happens when no one is watching? How do people speak about clients when leadership is not in the room? How do they speak about candidates? How do they speak about the business? How do they respond when something goes wrong? Do they protect the standard or do they drop to the lowest behavior they think that they can get away with? That is your culture. Not the values on the wall, not the paragraph in the induction pack, not the we're like a family that usually means someone is about to ignore a boundary. Culture is what people do when they think no one is listening or watching. And if leadership does not set, model, and protect the standard, the business does not scale culture, it scales behavior drift. Fracture 2, decision drag. You may be in this stage if every important decision still needs the same 2 or 3 people, not because these people are control freaks. Do I mean that or am I just being polite? Okay, perhaps. God knows I have seen it. But sometimes they are only the ones with the context, authority, judgment to make the call. And that is exactly the problem. If your business needs the same few people to approve, translate, rescue, clarify, or unblock everything, you don't have a scaling model, you have a dependency model. Decision drag sounds like this. Let's wait for Sarah. Has James approved this? Have we checked with the executive team? I just want to make sure that we're aligned. We probably need to run this past enter name here. Alignment is important, but in a lot of businesses, alignment becomes the word people use when they just don't know who owns the decision, or they're not prepared to take a decision. And that is usually the deeper problem. Ownership is unclear, authority is unclear, priority is unclear, next step is unclear. A project has 5 stakeholders and no owner. A meeting, 12 attendees, no decisions. A problem's being discussed for 3 months. It belongs to everyone and no one. Everyone's busy. They're all across it. They have the context. But the work moves through mud, and this is dangerous because it hides inside activity. The calendar looks full, so people assume progress is happening, but activity is not progress. Discussion is not a decision. Visibility is not accountability, and being across something is not the same as owning it. If every meaningful decision travels back to the same few people, the business doesn't have leadership depth. It has escalation dressed up as control. If ownership is foggy, accountability becomes almost impossible. You cannot hold someone accountable for an outcome they don't own, a decision they cannot make, or a standard they simply cannot see. That is not accountability. That's frustration. Fracture 3, capability debt. Now, this is what happens when the business grows faster than the capability of the people system underneath it. And it's one of the most expensive fractures because it actually hides behind loyalty, tenure, and good intent. Someone's loyal, someone knows the business. Someone is technically strong, or your top performer. Someone has been there through the messy years or from the very beginning. So they get promoted to leader, and everyone quietly hopes leadership capability will appear under pressure. Well, we know that hope is not a strategy, and let's be honest, it usually does not just appear. Knowing the work and leading the work are not the same thing. Your best operator is not automatically your best leader. Your most loyal employee is not automatically equipped to hold standards. Your nicest team member is not automatically capable of giving honest feedback, and your busiest person is not automatically commercially useful. Leadership is not a reward for tenure. It is a capability. This is not only about leadership titles, though. It is about capability across the business. Scaling businesses often assume the people who are right for the last stage will automatically be able to deliver in the next stage. That, or they simply don't take the time to pause and think about it. And sometimes they can, but sometimes they cannot. The roles change. Complexity changes. The pace changes. The judgment requires change. The communication standard changes. Technology changes. Customer expectation changes. The commercial expectation changes, and suddenly the business is asking people to perform in a version of the company that they were never hired, trained, or prepared for. That's not a character flaw. Sometimes it's just simply a capability gap, and when the business does not address capability directly, it pays for it indirectly through rework, avoidance, slow decisions, inconsistent standards, poor communication, and good people carrying more than they should. You've got senior leaders that get dragged back into problems that should have been solved levels below them. Managers are the translation layer. They sit between strategy and the work. So the executive team says, this is the priority. The manager either turns that into clarity, ownership, and action, or they turn it into a dozen vague tasks, more meetings, and a confused team. That is why capability debt becomes expensive. The business thinks the strategy is not landing because people don't understand it or that it's not good. Often, the strategy is not landing because capability required to execute it just hasn't been built. Capability doesn't rise just because the growth target changed. It has to be built. Fracture 4 is signal breakdown. This is one many businesses misdiagnose as a recruitment problem. They say, we're not getting good candidates. The market is tight. People do not want to work or do the work. The job ads are not working. Maybe, but sometimes the issue is not the job ad. Sometimes the issue is the signal. What does a business look like from the outside? What do people hear about it? What do employees say when leadership's not in the room? Would your best people recommend the business to someone they respect? Would they bring in a friend or a family member? Would they tell a high performer, you should work here? Or would they quietly say, honestly, I would not do that to you? I've seen in a business where referrals were almost non-existent. And when I explored further to get underneath the why, the reason was not that employees didn't know good people. It was that they did not want to bring people they cared about into the business. I was horrified for this company. That's not a recruitment issue. That's a much larger issue, and it's concerning on several levels because your people are either your best ambassador or your most credible detractors. You can have a polished careers page and you can write a decent job ad. You can talk about values and flexibility, opportunity and growth. But if the lived experience does not match the promise, the market finds out. Candidates can feel it in the process. Employees talk, referrals dry up, good people hesitate, and the caliber of applicants drops. The recruitment process becomes harder, slower, and more expensive. Then the business says there's a talent shortage, and maybe sometimes the right people exist, they just are not convinced that your business is worth joining. And that's a signal breakdown. Scaling business simply cannot afford it because the next stage of growth requires stronger capability, better judgment, and sharper leadership. If the business cannot attract it, select it, and keep it, growth becomes much harder than it needs to be. 5, accountability theatre. You may be in this stage if your meetings create visibility but not movement. Everyone knows what's happening. Everyone can explain the delay and they have context. There are updates and everyone has a version of the issue. But the same problem keeps coming back. That's not alignment. That is observation. And observation is not execution. This is where business perform the ritual of accountability without the reality of it. So meetings happen, actions are noted, dashboards are reviewed, updates are shared, and everybody nods along. Then the same issue comes back the next week. The same deadline moves, the same person under-delivers, the same behavior gets tolerated, and the same senior leader has to step in to rescue. Or the same high performer, absorbs a mess. The business tells itself it has accountability because it has meetings. It doesn't. Meetings are not accountability. Dashboards are not accountability. A project plan, not accountability. Accountability is a standard and owner, a time frame, visibility, and consequence. Without consequence, it's just theatre, and high performance see through that quickly. They know when a business is serious. They know when a standard is real. They know when leadership will act, and they know when the company is quietly relying on them to compensate for the people they don't want to confront. That's when you lose good people, not because the work is too hard, but because the wrong people are allowed to take the piss and make the work harder than it should be. Okay, quick pause. Before we move into why businesses waste money trying to fix the wrong problem, I want to ask a favor. I want you to subscribe to the Glass Signal. Costs you nothing and does 2 things. 1, it makes sure that you won't miss the next conversation, and it helps the show reach more people who care about businesses, stronger leadership, high standards, and performance. So please take a second, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you doing it. Now let's talk about where businesses spend money on the wrong fix. They hire more people. They add another meeting. They buy new software. They rewrite the strategy. They run a culture workshop. They brief another recruiter. None of those things are automatically wrong. If the diagnosis is wrong, the solution just adds more noise. If the issue is leadership drift, another values workshop will not fix it. Because the problem is not that people have forgotten the values. The problem is that leaders are not consistently setting, modeling, and protecting the standard. One leader avoids the honest conversation. Another leader thinks the answer is to become the most feared voice in the room. Both are weak. Avoidance is not leadership, but neither is intimidation. Making people fear you is not the same as holding a standard. I mean, sure, fear might create compliance in the moment, but it does not create ownership, judgment, respect, or trust. It does not make people bring you the problems earlier. It does not make people tell the truth faster. It does not make people think more commercially. It just teaches them to manage your mood. That's not performance. That is self-protection. So if leadership is drifting, the answer is not a nicer values deck. The answer is leadership capability. Leaders need to have the tools to communicate clearly, set expectations, give constructive feedback, hold the line, and have the honest conversation before it becomes a business problem. If the issue is decision drag, more meetings will not fix this, because the issue is not that people need more opportunities to talk. The issue is that they do not know who owns the decision, or they don't feel like they have the authority to make it, or the business has confused senior visibility with control. So the work keeps traveling back to the same few people. More meetings just give the delay a calendar invite. The answer is decision rights. Who decides? Who owns? Who needs to be consulted? What can move without approval? What must be escalated? Until that's clear, the business will just keep mistaking activity for progress. If the issue is capability debt, technology alone will not fix it. And I want to be clear on this issue because I'm sure people will argue the opposite. Yes, technology can help. AI, automation, better systems, better tools can absolutely create leverage, but only when the business understands the capability gap it's trying to close. Technology will not turn a weak leader into a strong one. It will not give someone commercial judgment. It will not teach a manager how to give feedback that lands right. It will not fix poor role design. It will not magically make someone capable of operating at the next stage of the business. At best, it just supports capability. It does not replace it. So if the issue is capability debt, the answer is not buy the tool and hope the people lift. The answer is to determine the capability required for the next stage, then decide what needs to be built, bought, redesigned, or removed. If the issue is signal breakdown, another job ad will not fix it, because the issue may not be the ad. It may be what the market already believes about the business. It may be the candidate experience. It may be the way employees talk when you're not in the room. It may be the reason referrals have dried up. It may be that your people would not recommend the business to someone that they respect. That is not a recruitment problem. That is a reputation problem. And you cannot outmarket a poor lived experience. You can write great culture in the job ad. You can talk about growth. You can talk about opportunity. You can polish that careers page. But if candidates feel inconsistency in the process, if employees are quietly warning people away, or if the business has a reputation for burning people out, the signal is already working against you. The answer is not just more sourcing. The answer is to strengthen the actual employee experience, recruitment process, leadership standard, and employee signal so the right people can see the business is worth joining. If the issue is accountability theatre, another dashboard will not fix it, because the problem is not that people cannot see the work. The problem is that visibility is being confused with movement. Everyone knows the issue. Everyone can explain the delay. Everyone has the update, but the same problem keeps coming back. That is not accountability. That is reporting. And reporting without ownership is just admin. The answer is not more reporting. The answer is a standard, an owner, a time frame, visibility, and consequence, which is simply just an outcome. Consequence, good or bad, it's just an outcome. Who owns it? By when? What does good look like? What happens if it does not move? What gets corrected? What stops being tolerated? This is where businesses waste a lot of money. They solve for the symptom. More people, more tools, more meetings, more dashboards and reporting, more slogans, more job ads. But the real issue is usually much deeper. That is why diagnosis matters, because if you misread the problem, you will build the wrong solution. That's where Glass Partners works. Glass Partners helps you scale the right way, and most importantly, help you take your time back, get that payoff, and enjoy what you've actually built. Glass Partners will come in when the business is growing, but execution is lacking. Decisions are slow, standards inconsistent, leaders are stretched, Capability gaps are becoming harder to ignore. The recruitment process is not attracting the high caliber of people the business now needs. Accountability depends too much on personality, and too much still comes back to the same few people. The issue is not usually effort. Most businesses have plenty of that. The issue is the people system underperformance, and that is what Glass Partners will strengthen. Leadership, accountability, clarity, and brand. It's in that operating work that helps a business move from dependency to discipline, because most businesses just need less friction. They need decisions to move. They need capability that matches the next stage and a signal strong enough to attract that better talent. They need that accountability that holds when the strongest person is not in the room or you are not in the room. And that's the work. And that is the difference between growth and scale. Growth adds more, scale requires stronger. So if that sounds appealing, reach out to Corinne at CorinneGlass.com. Or don't, the choice is yours. You can just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, so if this is sounding familiar, here is where I would start. Start with an execution reset. Step 1, name the constraint, not the complaint, the constraint. For example, do not say communication is poor. Ask, where is communication slowing execution? Do not say people need to be more accountable. Ask, what ownership standards or consequence is missing? Do not say the founder is too involved. Ask, what decision still depends on the founder, CEO, or senior leader that should now sit somewhere else? Do not say the team needs to step up. Ask, what has leadership failed to define, develop, or reinforce? Do not say we cannot find good people. Ask, what signal are we sending to the market, and would our own people recommend this business to someone they respect? Remember, the quality of the diagnosis determines the quality of the fix. Step 2, clarify decision rights. What can people decide alone? What needs consultation? What needs approval? What must be escalated? Where are people waiting because authority is unclear? Decision rights are one of the fastest ways to reduce friction. Not by letting everyone do whatever they want, by giving people structured authority. Step 3, reset the standards. Pick the area that matters most. Client experience, quality delivery, hiring, candidate experience, leadership behavior, internal communication or external, performance conversations, execution rhythm. Then define what good looks like in a behavior, not in slogans. We communicate well is not a standard. Every client receives a same-day update when delivery risks appears. That is a standard. We take ownership, not a standard. Every meeting ends with one owner, one deadline, and one next decision. Make that the standard. We value candidates, not a standard. Every candidate receives clear communication at each stage of the process is a standard. We value performance, not a standard. Missed commitments are raised within 24 hours, not silently absorbed by the competent people. That is a standard. And that is what leaders do. They translate expectation into behavior. Step 4, build the capability plan. The business needs to get honest about whether the current capability matches the next stage. Where has the role outgrown the person, or where has the person outgrown the role? Where are leaders being asked to lead without the capability to do it well? Where are skill gaps slowing execution? Where is the business relying on loyalty instead of capability? Where does the business need to build, buy, or redesign capability? This is not about writing people off. It is about being honest. Growth changes what the business needs from people. And if capability is not built deliberately, the business will pay for it indirectly. Step 5, strengthen the signal. Look at the business from the outside in. What would a high caliber candidate see? What would they hear? What would the recruitment process tell them about the business? What would employees say when leadership is not in the room? Your people are your ambassadors. So are they? Or are they quietly warning people away? Your employer signal is the lived experience of the business made visible. If the signal is weak, recruitment just gets harder. If the signal is strong, the business has the luxury to choose. What a beautiful world that would be. Step 6, install operating rhythms. The business does not scale on intention. It scales on rhythm. What gets reviewed weekly? Where are decisions made? What are blockers where are blockers that need to be removed, I should say? Where is performance discussed? Where are standards reinforced? Where does the leadership team stop admiring the problem and actually remove it? Operating rhythm is what turns strategy into traction. Without rhythm, everything depends on urgency, memory, and personality. With rhythm, the business starts building consistency. Step 7, build leadership capability. Do not wait until the business is already frustrated. Do not wait until good people are carrying the weak ones. Do not wait until every conversation is reactive. Build the leadership layer before it becomes the constraint. Leaders need to know how to create clarity, set expectations, give feedback, make decisions, run meetings that matter, hold standards, communicate change, coach performance. Have the honest conversation before it becomes a business problem. Because the leadership layer is the translation layer between strategy and execution. If that layer is weak, everything gets diluted. And then the business starts wondering why it's working harder but not getting stronger. That is your warning sign, not hard work. Hard work is a part of business. The warning sign is when hard work becomes the substitute for a strong system. So, I bring us back to the original question. If your business doubled in the next 12 months, what would break first? Whatever came to mind is probably where the work starts. Growth does not make a business scalable. It just makes the truth harder to hide. So before you chase the next level of growth, ask yourself the harder question. Is the business actually ready to scale? Or is it about to become a bigger, heavier, more expensive version of the same problems? Because scale does not reward the business you hoped you had. It exposes the business that you've actually built. Thank you for listening, and until next time.